My name is Nan Janke, and on behalf of the Parish Committee, I'd like to welcome you all to the service here at First Parish this morning. A special welcome to newcomers and visitors, anyone who may be checking us out for the first time in the new year. We're always happy to see new faces here. We invite you to join us downstairs after the service in the big room that we call the vestry, and there you will find coffee and conversation and a welcome table where you can pick up information about this church or talk to people about what you're interested in learning. You can always speak to our minister, the Reverend Deborah Bennett, or to our Director of Lifespan Education, who is not with us this weekend, but is here most other weekends, and you can reach her in the office during the week. In the meantime, I can tell you that we are a mission-driven faith community, and our mission is threefold. It is to search for meaning, to deepen our spirituality, and to make a better world. A big thanks to all of our service participants today, the ushers and the greeters and the readers and everyone who pitches in to make this service happen. A couple of small announcements. First, please note that the Middlesex County risk level for COVID is currently at medium, and that means that we do encourage you to wear a mask during the service. Those of us who are unmasked up front here have tested for COVID this morning. We're all negative. If you didn't bring a mask and you would like one, you can get one at the back of the sanctuary, or one of the ushers will bring you one if you just raise your hand. The other announcement is to please silence your cell phones. Please join me now in saying hello to the people who are not with us in the sanctuary but are online. And you can do that by waving this week to the camera up in the choir loft. And now we have an announcement from the Welcoming Congregation Committee.
Good morning, I'm Laurel Whitehouse, pronouns she, her, hers.
And I'm Melanie Larson, pronouns she, her. We would like to extend an invitation for this Friday night. We are having dinner and a movie here at 6 o'clock. You may join us for a potluck. We ask you to come as you are or bring a main or side dish. And then at 7 o'clock, we're going to be showing the film Casa Susana, which is an American experience documentary about a refuge in the 1950s and 60s in the Catskills for folks who at the time identified as cross-dressing men. It's a beautiful story of love and friendship and the people who carry you through your lifetime and family. Afterwards, we'll host a discussion, and at movie time, we will have a give-as-you-choose movie theater-style popcorn and treat bar, where 100% of funds raised will go to Out Metro West for their work supporting LGBTQIA youth in our communities. And we will also have a very special guest. Lily Pearl, the education manager for Out Metro West, will be joining us that evening. I have that's a lot of information. So we have movie tickets that we can pass out here. And I encourage you to take one because each one will be one free entry for our centerpiece that evening. So who would like a ticket?
Me. Ticket.
Choir, we will not leave you out. We will put a stack on the piano rather than engage in a runner.
I got tickets. Who wants a ticket? Rita gets a ticket. Ticket. Who's got a ticket? This is a very important ticket. Very important ticket. Don't miss out on your ticket. The tickets are free. The popcorn's going to be yummy. The amazing. Ticket. Who else wants a ticket? Who else? Ticket. I got some more tickets. All right, you guys keep doing. Maybe we should sing. Okay, I've got certain. Oh, we got tickets over here. We got 2 tickets over here. I'm running out of tickets. We got tickets. Bring your ticket. I got more tickets coming. Oh, we got tickets over here. We got tickets over there. These tickets are counted, so I know who's got your ticket if I don't see you. We got some tickets going in the back. Sold. Melanie, you did a great job.
Thank you very much. Our services will now begin.
Well, I feel excited about that music. Thank you. That was awesome. And thank you, Susan Miner. As we'll mention a little bit later, Polly is not with us this morning, but that's right. Go ahead and clap. That's beautiful. It is so good to see you all this morning. Good morning. I am Reverend Deborah Bennett, and it's a joy to be with you in person, although doing the Zoom thing last week was kind of fun, a little nostalgic. And I am glad those of you that can join us on Zoom are able to do so, but it is so good to see you all in person. Today we get to honor Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and as we hear his words throughout the morning, some of which you may be very familiar with, I invite you this morning to relax and take them in even more deeply. In them, I trust you will find something that stirs you anew and is indeed a salve for your own justice-seeking soul. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you a secret. Now, some of the people who were organizing the Casa Ciudadana movie were kind of worried that maybe not a lot of people would come. So I made a bet that at least 30 of you would show up on Friday night. So there might be a little money riding on this, but in addition to the fact that it's an amazing movie and an amazing way to connect as a community, would you come? Yes? Do I get some? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So I did want to open with these words from Dr. King's book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? Indeed, it's a prophetic question, very relevant for today. He says, some years ago, a famous novelist died. Among his papers was found a list of suggested plots for future stories, the most prominently underscored being this one: A widely separated family inherits a house in which they have to live together. This is the great problem of mankind, says Dr. King. We have inherited a large house, a great world house in which we have to live together, black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu, a family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interest, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace. End quote. As we gather here this morning, coming from many places, with many identities and beliefs that we hold, may we practice right here in this space, being together in this house, learning how to live as one family in peace. So may it be, and let us join our voices together in raising the roof of this house. We're going to be singing from the Teal hymnal. It is hymn 1017, We Are Building a New Way. Please rise in body or spirit, and let's join in singing.
Today's story is adapted from The Other Side by Jacqueline Woodson. That summer, the fence that ran through town seemed even bigger. It was a wooden fence, unpainted. It had 4 rails that ran along it. And that summer, I was just tall enough to see over the top rail. We lived on one side of the fence in a yellow house, and on the other side of the fence lived the white people. Our family was not white, our skin was dark. My mama said, "Don't ever climb over the fence when you're out there playing. It isn't safe." That summer, across the fence, there was a girl in a pink sweater. Every morning, she would climb up and stand on the lowest rung of the fence and look across at our side. Sometimes I stared back at her. That That girl never played with anyone or sat on the fence with anyone. She didn't, that girl. That summer, everyone and everything on the other side of the fence seemed really far away. I asked my mama why that was, and she said, "That's the way things have always been here." Sometimes when my mama and me would go to town, we'd see that girl and her mama. She looked sad a lot, that girl did. "Don't stare so," my mama said. "It isn't polite." It rained a lot that summer, rained and rained. On rainy days, that girl would climb up and sit on the fence in her raincoat, and she'd let herself get soaked right through. She acted as if she didn't even care. Sometimes I saw her jumping and hopping around in puddles, splashing and laughing. My mama didn't let me go outside on rainy days. She said, "You stay right here where it's warm and safe and dry." But I always looked for that girl, and I always saw her somewhere near the fence. One day, when me and the kids were jumping rope near the fence, that girl called out, "Can I play?" And my friend Sandra said no, without even asking any of the rest of us. I don't know what I would have answered. Maybe yes, maybe no. So finally the rain stopped, and I went outside, and I was walking through the grass, and it was wet on my feet, but the sun was already high overhead, and I reached my arms up toward the sun, and I felt its warmth. I felt brave that day. I felt free. And when I got near the fence, that girl asked me my name, and I said, "Clover." "I'm Annie," she said. "I live right over there behind the clothesline. That's my shirt hanging out to dry." And then she smiled. She had a nice smile, that girl did. And I smiled back. And we stood there looking at each other across the fence, smiling. "It's nice up here on the fence," Annie said. "You can see all over." I reached out and I ran my hand along the rail, and I touched the top rail. And Annie said, "This fence, this kind of fence was made for sitting on." And she looked at me sideways. I said, "Well, but my mama says I must never ever climb over the fence." "My mama says that too," said Annie. "But she never said nothing about sitting on top of the fence." "Neither did my mom," I said. And so that summer, me and Annie sat on the fence. And when Sandra and the other kids looked at us funny, I made believe I didn't even care. I saw my mama looking out the window at us sometimes, and I thought, oh, any minute she's going to come out and she's going to say, "You get down off that fence right now before you break your back or something." But she never did. "I see you made a new friend," said Mama one morning. I nodded, and Mama smiled. And so that summer, me and Annie watched the whole world go by from the top of that fence. And eventually the kids came around again, and they were jumping rope, and both of us called out, "Can we play?" "I don't care," said Sandra. And so we started jumping all together, and it was me and Sandra as partners, just like the old days. And finally, when we were all too tired to jump anymore, we climbed up onto the top rail of that fence. And we all sat in a line, every one of us, a big, long line. "Someday," said Annie, "someday, someone's going to come along and knock this old fence down." "Yeah," I nodded. "Someday." And now the children and their teachers and leaders will go downstairs.
Laurel, thank you for that beautifully told story, and what a touching story. Today we joyfully support the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry. The Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry is based in Roxbury and has a mission to work across race and place to dismantle white supremacy culture, to advance racial, economic, and social justice, and I'm sure to take down any fences that exist between us. They provide safe shelter and workforce development for survivors of domestic violence. They provide academic enrichment for Boston area youth of color and offer humanities programs grounded in social justice. Your generous contributions are greatly appreciated and will be shared with them 50-50 with our congregation. The offering will now be gratefully received.
My pronouns are he, him, his. This is a time in our service we set aside to acknowledge the joys and sorrows that we share. In both our sharing and in our witness, we affirm our covenant to care for one another. Each Sunday we light a vigil candle in recognition of the pain and suffering being experienced around the world due to ongoing war and violence. May this small act help unite us in our prayer to the end of all this suffering. If you have a personal joy or sorrow you'd like to share, please feel free to come up and express it, or you can, may we hold in our hearts those who have spoken, those they have named, and those we hold in silence. May it be so.
Thank you. On January 28th of 1956, Dr. King received a phone call threatening his life, his home, and his family. The Montgomery bus strike was well underway at that point, and King was threatened regularly. On that particular day, he said this prayer. He said, "Lord, I am here taking a stand for what I believe is right. But now I am afraid. The people are looking to me for leadership, and if I stand before them without strength and courage, they too will falter. I am at the end of my powers. I have nothing left. I've come to the point where I can't face it alone." After he prayed that prayer, On that January day, Reverend King said that he received a vision in his kitchen. He says, "I experienced the divine as never before." And he said it was a turning point in his life. So I'd like to, in that spirit, invite you into a time of prayerful meditation. If you like closing your eyes, please do, or have soft eyes as you take a moment to rest your thoughts inside, finding a place for you to rest. Perhaps using your breath as an invitation to draw your awareness inside and to your heart, taking a nice deep breath in and letting that go. Dr. King had a very close relationship with the divine. It is what held him throughout his years and throughout the hardest time. Notice for yourself in these moments, what is it that holds you? As you sit there with your bodies in the pews or at home on a chair, notice what is holding you. When you feel at the end of your strength, the end of your courage, the end of your personal powers, take a moment and feel, where is it that you turn? Where do you find safety? And see if you can have a sense of that feeling right here and right now in this space. Conjure up the feeling of the presence of what that is for you in whatever words you use. See if you can feel yourself being held right now and given strength and courage. Feel yourself as not alone. Let's all take a nice deep breath in together. Hold the breath in for a moment. And then slowly exhale. If one of the places you find yourself turning to for strength is your heart, please feel free to lay your hand on your heart, or otherwise just bring to mind once again that place you look to for strength, and sense it here with you on this day, knowing you take it with you wherever you go. Amen. Feel free to open your eyes as you would like. That hymn was written by Tommy Dorsey after the death of his wife and son during childbirth in 1932. It was said to be one of Dr. King's favorites. And I can imagine him in the relentless fight for justice, closing his eyes often with those words playing in his heart. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, take my hand. And indeed, regardless of one's theology, we all need the grace of a helping hand to guide us at times through our storms, do we not? I remember my first class in seminary. It was an orientation to ministerial studies for those of us just beginning the journey toward ministry. I don't remember what the advertised intention of the class was, but I do remember being thrown into a storm of confusion when it seemed that the focus of it was, in fact, white supremacy. I was especially confused when I realized that the term white supremacy was not being used to describe those racist white nationals who felt the white race superior to all others. Instead, I was confused as the professor spoke when I realized that what he was saying was that because of colonialism, we lived in a white supremacist culture, and as an extension of being a white person, I was the beneficiary of white supremacy and even complicit in it. He stopped short of calling me racist, but it was hanging in the air and I could feel it. Ouch, I thought. After some time hearing what felt like being accused, I raised my hand, and as the tears began to moisten my eyes, I said, "But I am a good person. How can you call me a white supremacist just because I am white?" There was a pause, and then another student raised their hand and introduced me to another new term I had not heard before, white fragility, she said. They told me that white fragility was defined as defensiveness on the part of a white person when confronted by information about racial inequality and injustice. It was a new idea to me, but one that I felt did not accurately describe the situation. I was not fragile. I was perplexed. I was not defensive about racial inequality, I thought. I was defensive because I was being called a racist. I decided to stay quiet. But then came the discussion of white privilege, and I was told that though my family had been part of a class that often was referred to as the working poor, according to the professor and some of my classmates, I had been raised with privilege. Wait, what? My confusion was now beginning to be mixed with anger. Me, raised with privilege? Now that was a joke, I thought, but I wasn't laughing. I left the room at the end of the class shaken to my core. How dare they say these things about me, I thought. I have worked so hard to get where I am with no financial support from anyone, and I am a good person. I am not a racist. As I stood in the hallway gathering my thoughts, drying my tears, and fuming, I began to write a letter to the school's president in my head. I had decided that I would swiftly denounce this kind of unfounded accusation and withdraw my enrollment in school. As I stood there in deep thought, the professor came and stood beside me. He was a tall black man with a long beard and piercing but very compassionate eyes. He was a Sufi. And there was something about his presence beside me that I had to admit was calming despite my anger at him. "This is hard stuff," he said simply. I gazed at him, wondering if he was going to continue with a lecture on how my reaction was proof of my fragility. But he didn't. He just stood there for a moment, Then, as if he had read my letter that I was composing in my head, he said quietly, "I hope you stay." I was still not happy, but decided to delay submitting my withdrawal form and see how it all went. Of course, I ended up sticking around despite the fact that it was not the last time in my 3-year seminary journey that the ideas of white supremacy and fragility and privilege would bristle me. Nor was it the last letter I would compose in my head. After 2 years of seminary, I decided to take a year off from classes to do the required year-long congregational internship. I wanted to ensure the congregational ministry was my path, and I wanted to get back to, quote, real ministry and away from all their talk about isms. My timing would prove ironic. It was the year 2016, the year that our country would elect perhaps one of the most outwardly white supremacist presidents in the modern era, and when our own association, the UUA, would decide to take a deep look at its own racial biases and self-described white supremacy culture. Ministers were instructed to lead their congregations in the conversations about white supremacy culture, white fragility, privilege, and how to dismantle racism in ourselves and our institutions. I had been called into ministry for a love of spirit and spiritual practice and community care, but now there were conversations about racism everywhere, not what I thought I had signed up for. And even as I helped co-lead the white supremacy teach-ins in the congregation I was interning at, my own words rang in my head over and over, "Yes, but I'm a good person. Can we please just slow this whole conversation down and take a beat? Enough already." I composed many letters in my head during that time. To quote my friend James Taylor, I just didn't know who to send them to. And then one day, the minister at my internship site here in Winchester, the Reverend Heather Janulis, gave a sermon. It was focused on Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. A little history in case you're not familiar, the letter was a result of several events. First was Dr. King's arrest on April 12, 1963. Along with 50 other protesters and civil rights leaders. They had been leading a demonstration in Birmingham, Alabama, one of the most segregated cities in America at the time, where a new city ordinance prohibited public gathering without an official permit, which of course they did not have. The demonstration had come after months of organized boycotts, which yielded few results. Dr. King was thrown into solitary confinement and was, as it was previously agreed upon with his supporters, he was not immediately bailed out. Instead, he felt that if he stayed in jail, it would draw additional attention to their cause. Shortly after Dr. King's arrest, a friend smuggled in a copy of the Birmingham newspaper, which included an open letter written by eight local Christian and Jewish religious leaders. Their letter criticized both the demonstrations and Dr. King himself, whom they considered an outside agitator. Isolated in his cell, Dr. King began working on a response and drafted an impassioned defense of his own nonviolent but direct actions. The letter ended up being about 14 pages long, single-spaced. And I'm not going to read the letter in its entirety today, but let me offer you some of it now. Dated April 16th, 1963, he writes, "First, I must confess that over the last few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the World Citizens Counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. Who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but can't agree with your method of direct action. Who paternalistically feels he can set the timetable for another man's freedom. Who lives by the myth of time and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. It continues. I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail to do this, they become dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. I had also hoped that the white moderate would reject the myth of time. He says, I received a letter this morning from a white brother in Texas which said, quote, all Christians know that the colored people will receive equal rights eventually, but it is possible you are in too great of a religious hurry. And Dr. King continues, he says, it is the strangely irrational notion that there is something in the very flow of time that will inevitably cure all ills. Actually, time is neutral, he says. It can be used either destructively or constructively. I am coming to feel that the people of ill will have used time much more effectively than the people of goodwill. We all have to repent in this generation, he continues, not merely for the vitriolic words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. End quote. Now, it was that last line that got to me as I listened to Reverend Janulus. As she continued speaking about the impact of this letter on the civil rights movement, I remember just sitting there with that phrase over and over in my head, the appalling silence of good people. Sitting in the pew that day, something finally occurred to me in that moment that had not crossed my mind prior to that. Yes, I was a good person, but the truth was, I had been a pretty silent good person up until that point in my life. Yes, I was a good person, but the truth was I had never felt an urgency to address racial inequality. Yes, I was a good person, but the truth was that I was privileged to have had the option to view racism as a relic of the past that did not require my immediate attention. Yes, I was a good person, but the truth was I was pretty fragile when it came to needing to be seen as a good person. I thought of all the letters I wanted to write to my seminary president, to the UUA, and to anyone who would listen, protesting the immediacy and the directness of their calls for action in our congregations. And as I sat on the pews that day, I wondered, yes, but how would Dr. King have responded to my letters had he read them? I recently came across a sermon from Dr. King where he used the line, "Make America what it ought to be." Indeed. In May of 1966, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at the UUA's General Assembly in Hollywood, Florida. Was anybody there, I wonder? No? It's amazing that he was there, right? In his address to us, and I say us, those of us that are UUs, even in spirit back in 1966, in his address he said, "One of the great misfortunes of history is that all too many individuals and institutions find themselves in a great period of change and yet fail to achieve the new attitudes and outlooks that the new situation demands. There is nothing more tragic than to sleep through a revolution. And there can be no gainsaying of the fact that a social revolution is taking place in our world today. That was in 1966. He continues, the great question is, what do we do when we find ourselves in such a period? Certainly the church has a great responsibility, because when the church is true to its nature, it stands as a moral guardian of the community and of society. It has always been the role of the church, he says, to broaden horizons, to challenge the status quo, and to question the breakmores if necessary. I am sure that we all agree that the church has a major role to play in this period of social change. Indeed, he could be saying that to all of us today, yes? As I returned to my seminary for my final year after my internship, I continued to learn and read and study and tried to examine my own attitudes and reflect on what the evolving situation in our country was demanding of me. And the truth is, on more than one occasion since then, I have bristled at some of how we have taken up the work of racial justice, as you use, or the way we use words to describe our work. But each time I feel that urge to write a letter, I pause and I consider, I really do, what would Dr. King write in response to that letter from me? And I remember the compassionate presence of Professor Ibrahim Farjaji Baba standing beside me, who passed away in 2016. And I am grateful that in their own way, both of these great men took my hand when it was needed to help guide me on. My good people, there indeed is work ahead of us, and wrestling with what we should be is part of that work. But let us not let those struggles or controversies over the words we use or how we declare our values lead us to inaction. Let us take up both that work of the internal wrestling we do with these concepts and ideas, with the external work we know we must do to create justice for all. On April 3rd, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. flew to Memphis, Tennessee to support a strike for higher wages and better working conditions by Black sanitary public works employees. That day, he delivered his "I've been to the mountaintop" speech, in which he talked about the threats to his life. He said, like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, he says, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And I am happy tonight. I am not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. The next day, April 4th, 1968, at 6:01 p.m., Dr. King was shot in the head while standing on the second-floor balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, surrounded by friends and associates. As he lay dying, he spoke his last words to his friend and musician Ben Branch, who was to perform at the event King was scheduled to attend that night. King said, as his final words, "Ben, make sure you play 'Take My Hand, Precious Lord' in the meeting tonight." and play it real pretty. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn, through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my way grows dear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call. Hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. I'd like to invite you to join me in a moment of quiet reflection. Once again, returning to that place inside yourself that is your hand. What strength do you need to carry on in your life, to live your values, to grow as a person, to grow in love and extend that love to everyone you meet? As you feel ready, I say amen, and you may open your eyes. Thank you for joining me in this service and letting me share that story with you about my journey, which continues, my growth, which continues in these areas. I'm going to invite us to extinguish our chalice and sing our final hymn. The words are in your order of service if you'd like to join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Let's rise and sing. Our final hymn is from the Gray Hymnal 169, We Shall Overcome. Please rise in body or spirit as you are able. In his book, Where Do We Come From? Where Do We Go From Here? Dr. King prophetically writes, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. We still have a choice today. This may well be humankind's last chance to choose between chaos and community. May we all go forth from here doing that work we need to each individually do so that we can be strong and courageous and not let it be too late." Amen, and blessed be. Please go now in peace and take peace wherever you go. Thank you for joining us this morning.